right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real Estate with your hosts, Colin Schwartz and
Chris Pomerleau.
Pomerleau or Pomerleau?
It's Pomerleau, but I don't want to come across as an asshole. So my grandfather anglicized it, and it's been Pomerleau ever since.
Pomerleau, I like it. I like it a lot. Today we have a fantastic guest, Blake Berke. Blake is a CPA that actually acts like a visionary. He's COO of a large construction company, and he has real estate experience running Airbnbs and quite a few other things. He's also a former athlete, so there are now two athletes in the room. Chris, you're catching up. It's okay. Blake, also from Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
Such as the other non-athlete, Chris.
Blake's
Sorry.
a rep in D2. I play D2.
Okay, fair enough. Oh, man.
I know that.
For Augustana.
Augustana in Sioux Falls even. Nice. We got an Augie boy. We got a Viking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wrestled, so I'm not really an athlete at all.
True.
Anyways, Blake, welcome. How are you today?
Doing well. How are you doing?
Good, man. How about you tell us about yourself?
Yeah, so, did a nice job with the intro, but my day-to-day, technically still CPA, but focus most of my energy around small and medium-sized business operations. So work with a company here in Omaha, McGill Restoration. So construction company focused on structural concrete, masonry, stuff like that. But really my role is to work with businesses and get them to integrate across all business units so that you're just seamlessly knocking out the strategic stuff. I think that so often businesses, they focus on getting in the weeds and the details and getting stuff knocked out, and not enough time is spent working on the business because they're so focused in the business. So I'm fortunate to just spend most of my time on the business and working with the people and trying to get them all rowing the same direction. And yeah, that's kind of the day-to-day.
That's no easy task.
No. It's I think when you look at small businesses, so many people that get into business, it seems like you're an idea guy, or in construction, so often you're an operator. And so you take an operator who's now like, hey, my skill set means I can go run my own business. And there's just so many pieces that get convoluted outside of so look at concrete, right? So, hey, I've poured driveways my whole life for this guy. And so I'm going to go start my own concrete business. And then, before you know it, it's like, oh, I got to go find people and I got to hire people. Oh, there's a little administrative burden to that. I got to be legally working in this state. You go further and it's like, I got to lead these people. They got to show up on time. They got to do what I need for them. And I think it's those little elements in a business where it's just getting people to be led in a direction that is most often the most challenging piece of, the business operations.
Yeah, that's why so many attorneys, they don't have all those skills. So they'll throw up their own shingles, and they know how to be an attorney, and they'll start Mike Johnson Law or whatever, but they have no idea how to do all the admin stuff, how to hire people, how to lead them. And that's why they always kind of hit that ceiling right away. I've never heard it. I guess that makes sense in the concrete world, but gosh dang,
How do you not know the plumber or the HVAC company where they started like, okay, I see what the boss is making. I want to do that. I can plumb. I can do every single thing my boss can do, except more of it. I'm going to go start my own plumbing business. Wait, there's books, AR, AP. I have to pay these people. What if I don't have any money? Am I supposed to get lines of credit? What do I do next? My taxes are due. I'm supposed to give, 1099s. No idea. So how does somebody be a CPA and a COO? I just kind of want to go back a little bit. What got you? You didn't just graduate from college and get this position, correct?
Correct. Yeah. So I guess my background is, the quickest way I can label it is, food stamp kid, right? So we were a family, 7, 5 kids. And I think growing up, it was just, hey, you're going to go to college, right? So my dad was, he passed high school, but he's get degrees in high school, and he just really didn't have aspirations beyond that educationally. And my mom really wasn't supported in a manner for her to do it either. So, hey, you're going to go to college. But everything that was preached at me through all of that was go get a safe job, go find one with benefits, go do all those things of that nature. So when I was going to school, really all my decision making was like, okay, what's a conservative type role that I can go chase after that's going to pay the bills and benefits. And so I pursued that, right? So between
as a CPA,
to go get my CPA. Yeah. Yep. And so even throughout college and some of the internships and stuff, I started getting that feeling though, like, man, I'm sitting at the desk all day. I'm not really seeing the upside. I'm seeing like the higher up people here, like this doesn't seem like the route that they went. And so, still pursued my CPA, right? Because a CPA is really just it's a license. So like, just like, an attorney, right? So, you can go use that anywhere. And in fact, in a lot of CPA world, it's like, hey, I was a CPA 4 or 5 years. I got burnt out. It wasn't for me. And then that's like that hiring pool for key finance positions. And that's really what happened to me. The unique part of it is I stumbled into a business that had an opportunity for me to go take, it's a little more advanced than what we were just describing, but I mean, they were running on green ledger paper and it was like 2015.
Wow.
Right? So you're talking about a business that was just named a candidate for Inc. 5000 fastest growing businesses in the country, running on green ledger paper. And so I came over with a CPA mind, but in reality, I was able to add so much more value in different places because, it's more like, hey, CPA, like I have all this book knowledge, I can get that all cleaned up. By the way, like these numbers are telling me some stuff. And if we run some analytics around it and do some of that, like this can be a game changer for the business. And it was just lacking that at the time. And so with all of those opportunities came new opportunities where, you start leading people and helping make strategic decisions. So, I mean, I could have my CPA active the rest of my life and never actually, do a tax return.
Will you?
I think it's one of those things where it's like, I actually got my renewal invoice here like last week and it just sat there. I'm like, man, why am I holding on to this?
Don't you miss the game, man? Don't you want to get back in the CPA game?
No, I don't miss the game at all. I don't. It's like two things. It's like the pride thing where it's like, I got my CPA. And then there's always like that conservative side of you where it's like, man, what if things don't really work out? And one day, like, you have to go back and get that. Like, you want to do that all over again.
Yeah.
But it's silly.
And it's not much to keep it going.
No, it's a few $100 a year. And then actually the biggest pain in the butt is you got to have like 40 continuing ed hours a year. And it's like, yeah, that's just a drain. That is an energy suck.
There's nothing fun about that.
No, especially now when you're doing like on the day-to-day when I'm making operational decisions and it's like, hey, go watch this new code of, they released this new code on tax prep. You're like, oh, that's it's not what I was spending my time on.
Sounds exciting.
That's terrible.
So we've talked about this offline, but with what you're describing, would you consider yourself in the traction world an integrator?
Correct. Yeah. So my title COO, but ultimately from traction EOS language, it's integrator. Yep.
You are the unicorn that every visionary wants, correct?
Yeah, one would say that. Yeah, you
just said that.
I did. Yeah. I will say yes.
I said that as well.
Yeah, of course.
How large is McGill right now?
So we'll do, I can give you a little perspective. So like we'll be like, call it like 40 million in a year. But we self-perform a lot of it. So whereas maybe a lot of similarly ran general contractors in town are in the couple $100 million, they outsource everything. So it's just a totally different model. We've got 20 guys from Guatemala showing up this afternoon that I go pick up from the airport.
They're going to live at some great residences as well.
I think I know where they're living, actually. Do you guys know where they live? You might have seen those properties before?
Got an idea.
Sorry. They, I lost my train of thought here. What was it?
Just how big the company is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, sorry. So we got like 150 field guys.
Okay.
So we really cover as far north as, say, like the Canadian border. So we'll go up to, we've done work in North Dakota, northern Minnesota, Duluth, Minneapolis area, and we've worked all the way south, essentially into Texas. So we had a project here that we just wrapped up down by like Corpus. So, I mean, we've worked in Florida last year. We'll work in Idaho this year. So we cover the United States, but 85, 90% of our business is done in Nebraska, and then another 5 or 10% is Oklahoma. And then
I saw you guys driving through Oklahoma the other day.
Yeah, we saw Tulsa. Yeah.
Yep, Tulsa. Yeah, we saw McGill rolling around there. So, do you know Blake?
We asked you should have honked at him.
Anytime I'm at a gas station, I'm like, do you know Blake? After reading the book Traction or E-Myth Revisited, it's become apparently clear that I am a visionary. I'm really good at like coming up with ideas, and then I break a lot of things, but at the end of it, like I'm left with something that's like a product, but I just don't clean up my mess very well. Like I describe it as like I'm running and chasing $100 bills, and at first a quarter's falling out of my pocket. That's just kind of the shrink. Then it's like $1, and then it's maybe $5 for every $100 I'm grab. Then it's a $20 bill, and it's like, okay, this process needs to be cleaned up. This is more gunsling, going cowboy, as I was telling Chris the other day. It's like, okay, there needs to be a process set up. How do you, as an integrator, get control of a visionary who's, not as process oriented and who's only focused on, I don't want to say pie in the sky ideas, because typically they have really good ideas that executed, when they are well executed, can be very successful, and are oftentimes successful on a small scale, especially when that initial project is started. However, the visionary likes to then go on to the next project, to the next project, to the next project. Little squirrely. We hung out for a weekend. I think you.
Yeah, I think I spent my time with Colin, and he like watched me. I was grocery shopping. We were sore. We just worked out in Denver, and I was looking at coconut water. I'm like, I hate coconut water, but I think that hydrates you.
Yeah.
I was sitting there, and Colin sees me looking at it, as like, organic, non-organic. It was like $8. It's like $4. And Colin's like, just take the dang water in my lap. Like, that's such a visionary thing. I'm sitting here counting my pennies. Like, am I going to really get, how do they know this is organic? Like,
he asked that question. He's like, ounce per ounce. Am I going to get the most effective? I don't know. I need to put this in an amp schedule. Yeah.
Question.
Yeah. So how much could I make off of that?
But that actually explains it really well. Now, so like, there's really important traits that visionaries bring. Okay. And I think I've told you guys this, but like most integrators and other people, like they dream of being visionaries, because oftentimes a visionary is the leader of an organization. They're the ones coming up with new ideas. They're the face, things of that nature. So before anything can actually get done, you have to have the idea. And then you have to put that idea in a format that can get everyone aligned to it. That's the vision. Without vision, then that doesn't matter after that, right? What am I putting processes to? Who am I hiring? What am I holding them accountable to? It doesn't matter, because like you have to have the story, the vision of what you're trying to accomplish, right? So just actually read the book Sapiens. So I got a peer group who read Sapiens. And I think one of the things that stood out in there is that, humans are so unique in their collective ability to have this storytelling ability, to have this collective imagination that aligns people and can allow groups of people to work together in large scale. And the thing about that is that vision creating, the storytelling that goes into it. Without it, the rest of it doesn't matter.
That's a tough read.
Yeah. Really? I loved it.
Did you read it or listen?
No, I read that book front to back.
Dude, so
the second one I couldn't homo deus, like it got a little too, even for me, a little too far out there. I can't think of
I don't think it's easy
robots yet.
I've never done this pre-Sapiens. I downloaded the audiobook and listened to it while reading it, because like my head was just.
Mosey says to do that, actually.
I had never tried it before. It works.
See,
it actually works.
Oh man, listen, I have.
It was such an interesting book.
Talking to somebody who did all the CPA stuff, I have been in the library for the law school and read the grossest things ever, the worst things to read ever, and I'd almost choose those more than Sapiens. Although it sounds like
so different. I loved that book.
You got to read it with, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Like, I think integrator languages is like, what is your desired outcome? Well, I'm reading this book to have certain takeaways. And so like, if I don't understand that fire was first and created and blah, blah, I'm moving on.
There is about 100 pages that we could have skipped over at the beginning.
Is it the first 100?
It's a little
slow. As far as I made.
There were multiple hundreds.
There's a couple slow starts to it, but man, it explains a lot of human psychology.
That's cool. Did McGill Restoration implement the traction stuff?
Yeah, so I'd come over in 2015. Tim had met, so like an implementer would be somebody who's doing that on a regular basis. So like running your quarterly meetings for you and helping with your annual.
Are they, sorry to interrupt it, implementers not necessarily an employee? Are they more of a contractor that views the business as like a consultant, outside organization? They see some problems, they come in and fix it and are
correct. Yeah, and that's actually changed in the last maybe 12 months, 18 months. And so up until then, they were all pretty much just independent, and they all just agreed like, hey, we believe in the same thing. Gino Wickman wrote this book, and we just go help do it. And then you kind of build this group of people that just work together well and are like, they just agree on like, we follow traction. It is pure. Here's how we do it, right? Well, over time, they were trying to become protective of like getting diluted and like turning into things that, oh, these people added this on and they got rid of this. So they actually got acquired like maybe a year or so, maybe one in the last year plus, and have actually turned it into more like a franchise model. So actually a buddy of mine's out in Denver right now getting trained to be an EOS implementer, but it's almost like regional and franchise. But when Tim was introduced to it, he was at, so we're an EO, entrepreneurs organization. And so he was introduced to this book and he's like, this is it. Like, this is game changer. My business needs this. And so at that time, we actually went to someone local in town, or this was before I had started. So it was like right before. And he's like, hey, read this book and facilitate this for me. So the guy facilitating it wasn't trained, but he eventually picked it up and started doing it for some other businesses in town too. But
Do we know that person?
You may. It'd be Byron McFarland. So Byron McFarland, he had been with Northwestern Mutual, but he's known for his bankable exits. So finding ways to help key employees become financially stable enough to buy into a business for transition, because that's like a setup deal, right? So like, how do I transition my way out of this business where I get paid and I get paid my value? And also it's pretty cool that the way I got that done is because I was able to financially enable somebody to do so without like major expense to the business.
And the business becomes significantly more valuable. You see of all these mom pop shops that they run these businesses, or they're a successful auto body shop. Maybe it's multiple of them, but none of their kids want to take over, and the business basically fizzles out, doesn't sell for the multiple that it should, because the buyer needs somebody with that institutional knowledge in there. And none of the employees are set up to purchase it. They can't, they're making $60,000, $80,000, $100,000 a year. They can't buy in, they can't put $1 million into this project. So setting somebody up to do that has the same passion and vision of it, that's huge.
Well, and he does a little, he's been pretty unique where he'll do some like dating period type stuff. So like, hey, before this guy's bought into the business or, is financially able, we'll do these like phantom equity plans, right? So the phantom equity has these achievements that you got to hit in order to get paid. Well, you get paid just like a bonus in that case. And that money, if you're like, now it's the dating period. So like, what's that guy going to do with the money? So is he going to go spend it? And the next thing you know, he's got a boat and he's got a camper, or is he the guy who's like, hey, no, I'm good. And the next, and then that can convert over into equity. And that's what actually happened in my case with McGill Restoration, was that type of deal. So, the thing you're talking about here though, as far as like scaling and making your business valuable, like, I mean, active businesses, like they're the ones that succeed, right? Well, you got to figure out how you're going to scale for value. So like, I was following a deal on Twitter. So, actually this is a kind of crazy story. So the guy who put it out there, so he, I learned, I grew up in the same city as him, and like I played with football with his brother, and like he just happened to go to a different high school and all this, but he's now coming up on Twitter, I suppose, a little bit. So Ben Tigler is the follow, and he does some like small, medium sized business type deal. So he had put out that there's a podcast that is for sale. And the idea behind the sale is, well, the host doesn't go with sale. And so his tweet made it live on one of the big podcasts, like My First Million or one of those, right? And so the discussion was like, well, what's a business worth without that host? And then every single one of them had a different opinion, right? Because if you build your business around one key individual, where's the value? And I think, we've talked about traction, and I think that's like a stepping stone into creating value so often, is like, I have designed a company-wide structure that has the right people in the right seats, doing the right things the right way, got them in this org chart. They know what they're responsible to. I've got leaders in the organization holding accountable. I got my data sources. I've got my processes I'm following. They're documented. Like, you think your processes are well documented, go do an acquisition. Like, I mean, so some of those things happen, you get them in place, and the next thing you know, that business was so reliant on one individual. And now, your multiple on valuation just escalated, because when PE company comes down, they're knocking on your door and it's like, well, let me look at your business. There's this one massive key contributor, and they see those businesses being so much more valuable. I mean, we've seen that in ours.
Wow.
So did you explain again, go back to the implementation of traction into McGill? So you hired somebody locally, and then you just started, were you familiar with the traction process, or was it just Tim at first?
It was just Tim, but I think that's the hardest part on traction is like, and this is where those visionary traits come in, is like, when he was passionate about it, like everyone was going to follow, right? So they're going to beat to this drum. So Tim says, we're doing traction. Like, we're doing traction. So it was a little clunky so I came in probably about a year after they had started the process. And I think, can I curse on here?
You can do whatever you want.
It was a bastardized version of traction.
That
right?
was the first.
Yeah,
it was a fucking Lou lead. He said bastard, and all right,
let's tone it down a little bit.
Shouldn't be allowed to say that.
Edit that one out. Put some bleeps on that one when you snip it. But it's kind of like, I think what we learned was so it was implemented. It was like the McGill version of traction, and everyone's like, well, I know that book is like written that way, but like, where is it different? Like, you're not that different. Like, I mean, sure, there's maybe small modifications. I think pure traction is labeled as like 85%.
Yeah.
But we were far from it. But
It's just easier, and it fits into the visionaries bucket of what's convenient to do. I can see myself doing that
well, and what happened
every once in a while.
difference. So traction, make business simple. Simple's not always easy. And I think that's where you get that conflict is like, it's simplified to a point where it's not easy for me anymore. I don't want to do that. But so what happens is we left some loopholes open, and those loopholes then allow people to be like, what other exception can I make? How do you hold people accountable to it when they're like, yeah, but we make an exception on that one thing, and then it's tough to implement. So that started getting implemented probably like 2014, came in 2015. We ran that way for a little while. So we've actually moved implementers to a more trained guy, Mark Stanley out of Des Moines. He's at a full book for a long time. So he's really good, and he's worked with us now on, we went pure, right? And that was probably 3 years ago.
You know, still doing it?
Still doing it. Yep. I don't know what the long-term plan is. Mark usually likes to roll people off where they're self-facilitating. And I think we could probably get to that point.
You still see a benefit of it?
I see a huge...
And that's quarterly that he comes in?
Quarterly. So 1 day a quarter, and then at the annual, it's 2 days. And so, I mean, we see value in it dollar for dollar, because it's like, I can facilitate this, but am I going to bias it a direction that the company wouldn't have gone if I wasn't? And, how do I participate in this thing when I'm also facilitating it? And so, like, just having somebody there to do those things that can just read a room, make sure that the things that need to be said are getting, like, it's paid off every time.
Right. No, that makes sense. And going back to the exceptions portion of it, I think at the beginning of every business, and even just as speaking as a landlord at the beginning, you start making exceptions and you don't realize it because they seem practical in the moment. It's like, oh, Susie's going to be late on her rent. I feel bad. She's never late. We're not going to charge the late fee. That's one exception. You start to scale those items.
Try scaling that.
And then you have exceptions everywhere. And the decision fatigue that comes with those without having, black and white answers, it becomes astronomically difficult. Certainly there are gray opportunities, but minimizing those, I think, has been one of the biggest things. I noticed when we were scaling from like 200 units and then went to 600 units, there was a lot of my bad behaviors that were instituted in that. No, we can pay you contractor payments. Very simple process that you would say, I mean, we all know you pay it every Friday or every second Friday or net 30. Like there should just be a set terminology. For me, it was like, oh, no, John, he did a great job. Says he needs the money. Man, I'm going to run over there. We're going to get him his check. We're going to get it paid. All of a sudden, you have 15 contractors demanding money at different points. It becomes not only just a logistical mess of trying to coordinate that, but also your accounting and your ability to track cash and everything. It just goes haywire. So those exceptions can be incredibly dangerous, and they just get magnified more and more the larger you grow.
Well, now, we're not perfect, right? Because we still make exceptions, but the scalability goes away with every exception made. And I think we found, even like writing AP payments, right? So like, I got a check due, we pretty much batch it now. Why? Because we just kept finding ourselves running down the hallway, and the next thing you know, you're interrupting that guy's workflow, and hey, cut this check, and now you got someone walks by as you're making it, and now you got 3 people standing in the room talking about this check, and it's like, dude, if we would just let it be, now you got the demand side of it, and you also have internal stuff, which is like, it just like, let them do their thing. Like they're gonna get to it, but
they'll get it done with their timing. I mean, another thing is actually, you would know this, but running projects. I mean, for us, we have preset projects, rehab projects, but then we have maintenance issues and then maintenance emergencies. And my gosh, it was like a year and a half ago, we'd have a project, we'd pull somebody from the project to go take care of the emergency. The time that is lost during that, not just the capacity of that person mentally, but just the physical time of driving, changing their trade and their craft, as well as the frustration that comes with that. It's the amount of loss that you get it's exponential. So it's something you realize, and then you hear it throughout the organization because they're getting frustrated. People want to be productive. Nobody complains about being productive. They hate being pulled all over the place and not being shown true direction.
Dude, we have actually, we picked up a really good client this year. Ever heard of Kellogg's?
I think so.
Kellogg's, cereal. So we picked up a job. So here in Omaha, they have what is at least their largest North American facility, and it might be the biggest facility that they even own. So they had this deal going on. They got 2 or 3 contractors in there, and things are just falling behind. So like they budgeted they budgeted like 1.5 million on this project, and we walk in and they're like 3.5 into it and like not even close to being done. Well, here's basically what we've heard from, our side of things is our guys will go in there and they're told one thing, and then another guy from Kellogg's come in and they'll be like, hey, no, do this thing. And then, another guy come in and be like, what are you doing? You're supposed to, be over here. Our guys are like, why? Well, we're doing this on it's like a time and materials type deal. So it's like, we just get paid for the time we're there and the work we get done. It's a pretty good relationship. We just got to get this project knocked out. But our guys are so burnt out. I'm like, hey, we're paying you to be there for every hour, and we're getting paid for every hour. So we just got to work with them. This is a big organization, right? And the crazy thing is it's like, yeah, but like, I just wanted to like check the box on getting that thing done, and they're not letting me do it. And it's, man, and that just speaks to it, right? Like, people want to see something through and get it done. And when you're zigzagging all over the place, it just drives you bonkers.
You have to have a purpose, and you don't feel like there's a purpose if you're not accomplishing something. That makes sense.
Yeah.
Dive back into simple is not always easy. I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you look at the traction process, what they really try to do is take all these different models that add, 8 different add-ons, right? And they're just like, if we break this thing down to the simplest form, how can we design what they call their EOS, their entrepreneurial operating system, that says anybody can plug this in. It's quick, it's easy, it's simple. You can do it, effectively. That was their philosophy, right? Well, I think that as humans, it's like,
As sapiens,
how can we add our own little spin to this thing? Oh, we can keep it that simple. Like, but what if we have this other piece of, and you just keep adding it on? Well, I mean, keeping things simple isn't easy. Why? Because we want to add our own spin to it. We want to make these exceptions. And so before you know it, it's like, hey, actually, like, putting this into the day-to-day is not that easy, right? Because I got to say no to these things. It's that type of stuff where it's like, hey, we have, so the process, really what they do is they use the VTO, right? It's a front and a back, the Vision Traction Organizer. So
Is that the scale from 1 to 100 in your HR organization?
no, that's one of their, so that's the organizational check-in. That's a tool that they provide. But essentially, it's like when people say like, hey, let's get on the same page, they're like, hey, here's the one page we're actually talking about, right? And so that's the simplification. And what does it have on it? It's got a few components. So it's got vision, right? So what is this organization trying to accomplish? And so that way we can figure out how do we get there, right?
Can you define vision? Is that like a certain amount of time, or is it larger, encompassing forever?
It's Colin texting me at 10 p.m. saying we should do this.
I've got a lot of visions.
I would say vision is like super big and broad, right? So like, even like, we call it purpose statement, some people call it a mission statement, but like a purpose statement. And ours is building relationships through craftsmanship. And so that can mean so many different things to so many people. So like, building relationships. Okay. Well, what relationships are we talking about? We're talking about relationships with our customers. We're talking about relationships with our family because we're providing for them. We talk about relationship with our coworkers because, hey, we got to work together every day. I got new friends, all these deals. Building relationships through craftsmanship. So when you break it down, it's like, oh, that's, it makes sense, right? And for most people, like, we ask all our guys, what does that mean to you? And it's like, I go do good work, they hire me back. And it's like, yes, that's accurate, but there's so much more to it. But the vision would be that. Now, we also there's another level of it, which is like understanding, what it is you do and who it is you do it for. And so now we've said, well, hey, we're going to build relationships through craftsmanship, but we also know our space. And our space is structural concrete, masonry, and steel preservation and things of that nature, right? So we narrowed it down again. And then within that, we'll even look at like demographics. So like, what kind of people are we trying to market to? What region? All of it. That provides a sales filter for us too. So like, we have the vision cast, and then within it, it's like, know yourself. So core values is a huge piece of traction. So know yourself. And also, it's kind of like know your customer, right? So does your customer meet these core values? If not, it's that 80-20 rule, which is like, well, who are we firing who just like doesn't eat? Like, they don't meet any of my core values. Why am I doing business with them? Right. Same thing with hiring and things of that nature. So that's kind of that front page. But then it goes bigger where like you have your 10-year vision, you have your 3-year picture, you have your 1 year, and then you have your quarterly. And so the whole idea behind this is we know who we are and we know what we're trying to achieve, right? So that component's laid out. The next thing is well, 10 years is pretty tough to predict, but I view it as like a mountaintop, right? So like, you're driving into Colorado and all of a sudden you see the mountain. Everything between us and that mountain, we don't really know at this point. The road's up, down, 2-lane, 4-lane. We can't really tell, right? But we see the mountains, and we know we're going to the mountains. It gives us that vision, okay? So now when that mountain seems so far away, you get the opportunity to like dial it back in. Look at those yellow tick marks on the road. Like, it's just that vision, man, that fountain's is so far away. Like, we're never going to get there. I can dial it back and look at the road. Then when the road gets too much, like, oh, man, like I'm just trudging through this day to day. I look up, oh yeah, I'm trying to get to that mountain. So 10 years that, 3 years is more predictable than 10 years. So usually your 3 year, we can get pretty dialed in. There's a little more that goes into that. What's more predictable than the 3 year, the 1 year, then the quarterly, right? So within all of those, as long as they all align, you should get where you want to go. And so one of our favorite things is like, you put it on paper, you think it out, you get it documented, like it becomes reality. And I've seen it happen so many times in so many businesses.
It's crazy. I remember we did our 3-year vision, 5, 3, and 1, and a significant portion of it came true. I mean, almost, certainly different in the actual numbers, but very, very similar. Very similar.
Numbers
Did
close.
you guys go bigger than the numbers? That's even more impressive when you're like, hey, these numbers, then you go like big time.
I'm certain of it.
I think we did go bigger in some of the areas. Yeah.
So they talk about like the BHAG, that 10 year.
Yeah. Big, hairy, audacious goal.
And like the number of people I've seen like blow past BHAG in like year 6, and you're like, yeah, man, because like you put it on paper.
It's so weird how that happens.
So
Great.
And I mean, we were talking before about real estate, and the thing is like all the things I'm talking about, I'm doing this in construction, right? And that's like a daily operating business. But I think I've seen that in real estate too. So like the difference between you guys and the competitors and who else is out there is like, are you actively running this like a business or not? And I think what I've noticed, progress over perfection means you're action takers. You have a plan, and you're just, like that pays off, which is I'm running this thing like a business. All too often it's like, oh, I'm going to go buy this duplex. And then I don't think about it. Like, I'll just add one more duplex next year, not think about it. And then I'll just buy Then you may have 4 duplexes before you know it, but you haven't been looking at all the deals. So maybe you got a couple good ones, maybe you didn't. Oh, and by the way, by the time you're in year 5, you haven't thought about your other duplex. Is it vacant? Is it losing you money? Is the shingles falling? You just see so many. I mean, it gives people a bad name when you talk about like, they just didn't take care of their property, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's because they're just not really actively participating, right? This is not. You're passive, and it's like,
yeah, exactly. What is passive income? I think that really helped me in the beginning. And being a visionary, I struggle to stay on these tasks for too long. It's like, okay, I'm off to the next thing. But when I did start real estate, I had read a ton of books, and the overall, the big encompassing idea is, sure, it's real estate, and sure, they talk about passive income, but every single one of those buildings is a business and treated as such, meaning you're forming, maybe not for everyone, but its own tax EIN, tax ID. It has its own bank account. You are actually tracking it. You're not just tracking it in your phone or through your head. You're getting property management software. No matter what scale you're at, you should have some sort of software facilitating it that can be all-encompassing. You don't need the best thing out there, but you need something, knowing that you may move on to another software at some point, but you need to set it up as a business. You need to set up a different phone line. You need to think about scaling, because people say that it gets easier when you scale if you do it right, but really you go from 1 to 10 units. It's not the difference of just having 10 residents. You may have now just added 5 more bank accounts, and within those bank accounts, there's 5 more tax returns. It becomes exponential, the more amount of work that comes from these items. So yeah, setting it up correctly is huge.
yeah.
It's easier to take on.
Which is helpful with the vision, because when I started, I didn't think I'd be at this size, but I was like, my vision was much bigger than what I saw in front of me and what I saw was possible. But I knew that if I just, kind of cookie cuttered it, did it my own way, just collect cash here, run around, do that it was never going to work.
And I think if you look at it, so how many businesses run on like, hey, do I have cash in the bank? And the more cash I have, the more like my business this must be going well.
Yeah.
Well, when you get big enough and you got, $4 or $5, $6 million bucks in receivables, you got $3, $4, $5 million bucks in payables, you got a credit card that's on a different pay cycle than all you. Hey, what's in the bank account doesn't tell a very good story.
Not at all.
And so I'm sure you guys have seen that with like acquisitions and sales and everything is like, man, if you're just saying like how much money's in the bank, like you're exposed on that. And I think you see that even in our world for construction is like small guys that don't usually scale are the ones who are just like, hey, is there money in the bank? And now you don't know your margins. I should have raised my prices, like, I don't know, probably 5 years ago and I didn't. And then I'll do one massive price increase and I lose like a bunch of my customers because they're pissed off and I got to field 87 calls today because, hey, why'd you raise my price 20%? And be like, well, yeah, I probably should have done, 1.5% or 2% every year. And it's just like, the more data you have, you build in the systems and all that stuff, you can just make better decisions.
That happens in the real estate game though too. A lot of times we're buying these apartments from mom and pop owners and they haven't changed the rents in 7 years and they haven't looked at the books and they're just like, well, look, we're full, money's coming in.
It's paid off.
Yeah.
So that's like my favorite line is like, well, I mean, I own it, right?
Yeah.
So like
your taxes and insurance and everything else hasn't gone up.
Oh yeah, and you just think about it, and be like opportunity's ripe for that. Now, like in construction, it's similar. So we're an asset-heavy business too, right? So like, unless you're going to run a model where you're renting all of your equipment, which just like then you're paying them the markup, we'll go buy equipment. Okay, so we're buying equipment. And it's like you go up against people who are bidding, and they just factor their equipment as free. Why? Well, I own it. Like, yeah, but you had to buy it. And there's wear and tear, and like if you don't price that into your job, then the next time you buy it, it's not free. And I think you just see people do that all the time where it's like they rationalize in their head that it's free. And it's like, no, man, opportunity cost, the cost of having it. I mean, you name it, it's not free.
I don't think that visionary is thinking about all that kind of stuff.
No. So this is a question I want to ask. What is some advice for both, I guess, the visionary, but the integrator as well, when a visionary comes with an idea and to actually process it to see if it's a good idea, bad idea? Oftentimes, until you find a great integrator, a visionary's throwing out ideas, and most of the population's like, okay, that won't work because real estate's expensive. How are you going to get financing? Did you know you're going to have to change toilets? You don't know how to change toilets. You're going to have to go pick up the rent. It's just completely like, I hear it all the time. I have these ideas all the time, and it's just like, immediately it's like, nope, that's not going to work. Did you think about this? Did you think about that? Well, no, but I understand that there's a need for a product. That's I believe how a visionary thinks. Mm-hmm. They see a gap in the market, and they see the end, and they see if they create that product, that somebody will buy it, and there's a need for it. It's everything in between that's the sticky part. So what advice would you give to visionaries to, one, better tee it up for other individuals, because you do need to get buy-in, but also as integrators, how do you not say, man, you're crazy, we've got 95 other things going on, stop, we're not doing your idea?
So we already talked about people. I mean, I could sit here and name a process for you, and I'm lying to you, right? Like at some point it is a relationship deal. And so how does it normally work in the business? I mean, I would say most visionaries are like, I got this idea and I'm just running with it. And then like the integrator's running behind, picking up all the pieces. I mean, that's like the normal deal. But I think, so like I can speak to my experience when like there's good visionary and good integrator relationship. So like in my case, and I've got peers that run on EOS here too. And in that case, it's like we have regular cadence touch points. So like I meet for 90 minutes every week with Tim, one-on-one, same time, same place when we cover these kind of things, right? And so like most ideas, I don't know, but like most of them, like, hey, if I thought of it on Friday, I could probably wait till our meeting on Wednesday or whatever. But I think it's just that communication thing. It's trust. Really, it's teamwork, right? So like the visionary, the integrator, like, yeah, they're two different titles, but ultimately like you're almost like a business married couple of sorts, whereas like you have to work in relationship with each other. Like if you're pulling apart, if there's friction, if you're going different directions, everyone in the organization is going to feel it. So that's like my perspective on how that works. But as an integrator, my biggest downfall is finding the barriers, right? So like I need to also be receptive and open to say, okay, which one of these ones are actually good? Now, usually I like to vet them out. So like, I'm not going to sit there on a spot and be like, bad or whatever, but it's like, at some point you have to hear them out and be like, okay, like I got to give that a shot, not tell all the reasons you can't. I think action takers do win out. And I think all too often you have the people who are the doubters, right? Mm-hmm. They're going to tell you everything that's going to go wrong. So is it integrator's job to keep you in line, but it's also their job to be like, I got to let some of this filter through. And really what's happening is they can actually feed visionaries too. So like on the org chart, you've got the visionary. The only person who technically reports to them is the integrator. The people that report to the integrator are really usually like business unit heads. So like in our case, we've got like operations, estimating and project management, HR admin, finance, sales, right? So they're coming up and it's like, you're really the filter between all of the visionaries' ideas and the things that you're running into that aren't making those happen. You're filtering them down to the department heads. and you're taking all the feedback from the department heads of things they need and issues they're having and trying to condense them and make sure that they're working together and filter back up. So like you're constantly ebbing and flowing in information. And I think the most successful organizations are the ones where you don't make things personal and you just keep it professional. And it's like, I'm going to hear you out, give it an idea, and then it just becomes a relationship. It's that people component.
That's why I spoke about this before we jumped online here, but that 6 Working Geniuses book, because there was actually, and it may differ a tad bit from Traction, but there was another person in between the visionary and the integrator, and it was the person who would kind of, it's obviously there's a lot of overlap. Everybody's helping out with visions and or checks and balances, but there was somebody in the middle who would kind of say, I hear your vision. Have we thought about A, B, and C? Because it's going to be hard for the integrator to integrate these things if we don't handle A, B, and C. So I'm not saying either one's right, but sometimes even in that book, it was great to read because it's like, oh, wow. So now it's not so much the integrator versus the visionary, because then all of a sudden it become like this duality of the integrator's only person saying, no, can't do it because of this, can't do this. It was always this middle guy who'd say, or person, woman, girl, anybody, who could just be like, look, I get it, but what about A, B, and C? That's important too.
No, that is really important. It's something that I even told you, like, I don't know, a couple months ago. It's like, if I'm having these ideas, I need to at least provide you with a decent amount of information, which you are really good at. You're like, hey, I've got this idea. I'm already like, maybe I'm on the 30-yard line, but it's because I've done all this research here. Let me catch you up to show you why this is a viable project. And I think honestly, I've learned that from you, is needing to do the additional research, because sometimes I can envision things and I'm fairly certain it will work. However, it's based on my past experiences, but I haven't written it down or put it in a nice little consolidated box to showcase of, here, this is why it will work. Now it's your turn to rip it open and see if it works or doesn't, not just, continually grabbing information.
Yeah, and then through the process, you then say, hey, look, this is the vision. Here's some reasons it could work. Here's maybe why it wouldn't work. And then it's the integrator who's saying, okay, now that we have all that, I think I can get it done because I know how to implement it. And that's...
Yeah.
Well, you do a lot of the work then for an integrator. If you're a visionary who does all those things, like you're doing a good chunk of that like vetting process for them. So you're already helping them.
No, I said I need to do it more. Blake. I need to do it more.
Like, well, there is another piece of it too, though. So like, we talk about the additions. So we talk about one-on-ones, like my time with Tim one-on-one. Well, there's also a meeting that we call, they label as a
level 10.
A level 10. Yeah. So L10. So we pull in the...
Have you read the book?
Yeah, that is the equivalent to Sapiens.
It's like a textbook.
Yeah, that is like reading how you guys describe Sapiens. That's like reading that Traction. I'm like, why is it not done yet?
Yeah. Hey, you remembered level 10 meeting? Do you remember what it means? It's silly.
No, I don't.
All it really was is like, they're like, oh, most people would rate their average meeting experience like 5s. Okay. So we're going to design this meeting in a way that like, hey, at the end, you're going to rate it and it's going to be a 10.
Because it's a weekly meeting that goes over KPIs, right?
Yeah. So, you start the meeting, you got like a segue, right? So like, what's the point of the segue? Well, like team's got to have some relationship. We might talk about some hard stuff in that meeting. So like, let's all loosen up a little bit. And so, start with a segue. And then you hit on things like scorecards. So scorecard's going to talk about some of the most important KPIs through department. So I'm talking about the leadership L10. We actually have departmental ones at our size now, but like, so at the leadership level, every single one of those has some KPIs that are important to each other that they can see: red, yellow, green, right? So then you follow a process. Like if it's off track, you kick it to the issues list. You have to-dos, you do all that stuff. Well, that meeting is an opportunity where I like to have Tim and my same page before. So we do the day before executive L10, because now he might come to me with this, hey, I'm thinking we should do this. Or, hey, what about this? We vet it together in that moment. I have time before it gets down there, but then it's like, hey, kick that over to the exec meeting and then we'll talk about it there. So I'm the first one to at least have eyes and ears on something. But at the end of the day, it ends up being a team decision too. Now, if he wants to go with it and everyone's kind of like, you're probably going to go with it.
No, that's really good, so that you two can be on the same page, so that there's not a surprise of like, okay, like, wow, Tim, that's out of left field. Now I have to put this together and pretend that I don't hate the idea.
Yep. Yeah. Okay. It's harder to support an idea that it's like, get me bought in at least. So he referred, it wasn't too long ago. He was like, I just gave you an unreturnable serve. Like, what does that mean? He'd be like, I just told you what to do. And like, you just got to do it. Like, okay, don't use that card too often, because that only goes so far.
Yeah.
It's at times, I mean, you guys run this thing day to day. Like at some point you see something a certain way, or you want things done a certain way. That's how business works. I mean,
right.
what it is.
There's sometimes me or Chris does bark and say, hey, this is what we've got to do.
Yeah.
Our setup's a tad different because it's almost like we have two Tims, if you will.
Yeah.
So we do
Twice the mess.
serve a lot of crazy stuff at each other, but
Yeah.
so that's throughout growing up. We didn't really get into a lot of the stuff, but like, did you always kind of feel yourself naturally getting into this integrator position? Is that a place you always felt comfortable, or do you think you just realized it after reading Traction?
I think it labeled it, but like, I think you kind of know. So, I mean, you got the people who just want to be told what to do, and I'll just go do it. You got the people who don't want to be told anything, and are going to do whatever the heck they want. And then, so this would be a little non-Traction, but like, we use some personality assessments. And so
What'd you use?
So we use Culture Index. Do you guys know Predictive Index?
Mm-hmm.
So it's got the 4 dots. And so Predictive Index was founded first. Culture Index spun off of it. They're actually based out of Kansas City, but we've found a ton of success with Culture Index. Well, and the different profiles in there, it usually kind of labels like your strong suits and not. And so my personality assessment is pretty dynamic, and it's definitely an integrator profile, right? So it's like problem solving, doing 8 things at once. No, it should have got done yesterday, but still staying high detailed. And I think growing up, I would say that was me, right? So like playing sports and stuff, I was going to be prepared. So you're prepared for the match. I'm in shape. I ate right. I saw who my opponent's going to be. We're going to do all that stuff. Go a step further, it was like even going as far as like, knowing the rules. And so like, I would guess, you go on a basketball court, you go on a football field, how many of those players really, really know the rules?
Not a lot.
Not a lot. But like, that was just my personality, which is like anything that I can use.
That's how you get the edge.
I get the edge, right? And so I think a lot of those same personality traits came over to business. Now, I think what ends up happening for most people, so I've fallen in love with these small, medium-sized businesses that want to be bigger and better, right? Like some people love corporate America. Some people, everybody has their place, right? And maybe I just want to work on a 5-man crew. But like for me, small and medium-sized business, I think one of the most fortunate things for me is that I fell into this deal. So like I didn't have someone holding my hand, guiding me. So extremely fortunate that I even discovered what it was. And then, fall into like, hey, we're going to run on Traction. And so, I couldn't have designed that to happen, but like, yeah, it labeled it pretty spot on once it all came to fruition.
What school did you go to in Sioux Falls?
So I went to Sioux Falls, Washington for high school.
Okay. When'd you graduate?
Graduated 2008.
Okay. All right. I don't want to name drop anybody, but I know a couple of guys that went to Washington.
What year were you?
High school in 2002. So everybody I went to Augie with were 02 to 07, 06.
Yeah.
So
I don't remember all the overlap.
Jordan played a running back.
Jordan Nordquist. So he would have been there before me. So I didn't know him.
Austin Parks played linebacker.
Austin, I know. So I went to school with his sister Allie.
Okay.
So like, yeah, he played linebacker.
He did.
He's a beefy dude. Like that guy could. So those guys, I think they either won the state championship or got second, and like maybe they would have been like sophomores. And so
what position did you play?
So when I was in high school, I played like defensive back, and then I was usually slot. But my best
look like it, right?
My best safety.
It's the exact build. Yeah.
My best friend in high school, he was the state player of the year. That is our senior year, and so he'd been playing tailback for us, and he tore up his knee, and so I had to go play some running back. But yeah, I was a defensive guy.
Nice.
That's what I liked.
I stopped playing football my sophomore year. So my son just got done with flag football, and they got second overall, and they were happy but disappointed. This 2 seasons in a row that they've gotten second. I then gave them my story about football, which we won 3 games in 3 seasons. But the last game I got a touchdown and an interception, and we won, which was an entirely defeated season. So I decided to go out on top, all 119 pounds of me. But
Uncle Rico over here.
Yeah. Oh yeah, dude. I relived that moment. Strong safety, running back. I tore it up.
Your son's already like putting pressure on you to like be.
Oh, he's like, you're a weenie, Dad. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, you're so unathletic. I'm like, get out of here.
He's right to your shoulders already.
He can catch everything he can do is better than me. He can throw better. He can catch better.
I've seen him on the field, man. He's a jukester.
Yeah, he's juking. Yeah, no, not Dad. I just put my head down and run straight in. That was it. That was my only
business too.
That was my only move.
You know,
Path of
you know,
straightforward.
you're bringing back some memories with flag football. So like when I was in college, I got into officiating because of flag football, right? So like going back to like the integrator stuff was like, it started with work study and everything, but like I found it and started rolling with it. And then, I don't know, it's kind of one of those like pursuit of excellence things where like in officiating, your job is to start perfect and get better from there. Because watch an NFL game. Like, are you not upset when you see something like, oh, how did you miss that? Be like, you're so freaking good. But like, what do they expect? Be perfect and get better from there. So I'm sure from your flag football experience, you've dealt with
Yeah, of course.
some of that stuff.
Yeah, some bad calls.
So where'd you ref? Like, what was it a
Yeah. So I
Augie games?
So I didn't work any Augie games, but so I was working the MIAA, which was the competing conference, so like Northwest Missouri State, Pitt State, Kearney. That's where I spent my last years. So our crew worked a Division II national championship, worked a junior college national championship, a handful of bowl games in the Division II level. So I worked my way up from flag football.
Nice.
And then, you start doing like high school and then get into college. So I worked some NAIA too, or some playoffs, and travel a lot. It's a grind. It's a grind. Even if you get to like the Big 12 from Omaha, like there's so many drive-to destinations that are like 5-6 hours away. You're not going to fly to, Manhattan. You're not going to fly to Ames. You're not going to, so like it's a tough grind, but
how does the ref never get in the way? Like the ref's just sitting right there. I just assume he's going to catch the football. Like, are you guys just like ninjas?
Some of them get
just like ninjas, and that seems like you just get wrecked out there.
They get like trained on it. So there's really only one position that's like really
right in the middle.
That's the middle guy. Yeah. How does he live? They're coming from all around you.
I think what they tell him is get skinny. So get skinny, which means like
turn sideways.
Yeah, which means I don't know. I didn't want to
lay down on the ground
position. I'm not standing out in the middle of
then
these
you're
guys.
curious why he missed a call, and it's like I was trying.
I think I'll live. I have a family, man.
That is not. And I think that their best success plan is like move where you're supposed to move when you're supposed to move. But like if like stuff's happening, like just freeze and like because the players will avoid you and they don't want to hit you either. But it happens.
But they will if they're going to get that pass.
They will.
Yeah.
So I worked a center judge position. So when they added the 8th official, where I was at is actually where the NFL puts the umpire. The NFL removed the umpire from that spot because back in the day when they were on the strike, that was too risky of a position. And so that's why in the NFL, they still run 7, whereas a lot of college now runs 8 because the college never had to remove the umpire. In the NFL, ever since their renegotiation and the risk of putting the umpire out there, they haven't had it.
College players don't hit as hard anyways, so I mean, you'll be fine.
It doesn't matter how good you are. Someone's just full speed.
Dude, I'm kidding. That sounds terrible.
Okay, so when should a business think about trying to implement a process like traction?
And what's the first like step or two?
Is there too early, too late? Well, certainly too late.
I don't know. Yeah, too late would be like your business is done. Anything short of like it's over, I think the biggest risk is just running blind. So if I had it my way, so one of my best friends has started a PT clinic in Sioux Falls, and when he started things, he's like, "Man, I'm a good PT." Be like, "Yes, you are." He's like, "I don't know how to run a business." Like, probably not. And so like, well, how do you get that thing up and going, right? You're going from, I was in a hospital setting providing care, and the next thing I know, like I got to do that and then also like promote myself and sell and build a team. And it's like, read this book. And so, with him, I just told him like from the get-go, like read this book. If this works for you, like I'm here for you, right? And so day one, they started implementing it. And here's the thing about that company. It has built a culture that is like unbeatable. Why? Because they set their core values, they hire to it, they fire according, they reward, they recognize, they put everything they wanted to be on paper from day one. And as long as they live out that document, it's great. So that's one example, right? So like start from day one. Now, over the last year, I've had an opportunity to work with my brothers a little bit. Just they're 25 years old. They're in the lawn and landscape business, and they were like, "Hey man, like I just need to pick your brain," right? So we're looking at it and they're like, this is one of those things where it's like, there's just not as much money in the business, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I'm constantly cutting these checks and like I'm counting what's in the bank and make sure it's clearing and be like, well, sounds like you guys, like, let's take a look at this, right? Your margins are getting thin. What had happened is you know, take two young guys, they start mowing yards at 17, 18 years old, it turns into a business. Well, when it's the two of them and they're out still mowing and doing all that stuff, like, hey, it is a business.
They're
right?
paying for gas and mowers.
Yeah, like it's kind of a solo entrepreneur journey. They start hiring guys and they start buying equipment and then they got to finance equipment. They got to do all this stuff, right? Well, what had happened is this is where simple is not easy, is their business was a simple business, but it's getting overcomplicated because they just didn't know their stuff. Well, why didn't they know their stuff? They didn't have a plan. And so like, that's where traction comes in. So same thing with them. It's like, well, you're in year 6, but you know, I started this when you're 18 years old. So like, read this, get back to me. If you think this solves your problem, hit me up. I'll talk to you about it. And so same thing with them. They've now implemented traction in their business. Now, granted, they're in Sioux Falls also, and Sioux Falls got, well, you guys own apartments. How'd that feel? Every snowstorm this year?
Dude.
They pushed snow. Record.
Yeah, a lot.
Did you hear that? Did you hear that record? We actually had a couple investors. They were like over Q1, Q4. They were like, "Why was the snow removal so expensive?" Like, I can't control this.
Yeah.
Because it's the 17th time out here this year. That's why.
I mean, the expense ratios were up like 10, 15% just because of snow.
Dude, they were trucking stuff out. So if you had a unit downtown, for example, they would come push your snow.
Which we did.
Then the next thing you know, you have haul-away charges. That means they had to get a skid loader on site, scoop the snow, go call up a dump truck, haul it completely out into the country and dump it in a field. And so like, but here's the thing, right? Hey, this will speak to like, on the real estate side, everyone's like, oh man, it was so expensive. And how did this get so expensive? We didn't budget for it. And be like, yeah, because you didn't have to pay anything for like 2 years before. Did you ever think about that one? Be like,
Those are the golden years.
I already spent that money. But that's the thing they dealt with, which are, now they're like, we got people coming out. I'm like, can we just go on a budget plan and be like, yeah, they probably should figure that out. But what they did is they took the traction model, and already 1 year into running traction, their margins are like double. Why? Because like they just are seeing the things they couldn't see before. They have a scorecard. So like one of my brother's scorecard they talk about is like, how many new leads and how much did I close on, right? We didn't talk about that before. Another one's like your optimized ratio. So a McGill restoration thing we do is we evaluate estimated manpower versus actual manpower. And so we're constantly gauging what percent complete are we on our project, how many days did we bid it to be done, and how many are clocked in. And we have this all tied in through our timekeeping and stuff. So we call our estimated to actual ratio. And it basically tells you, are you trending ahead or are you trending behind? And here's your red, yellow, greens. Well, same thing in like lawn and landscaping is you're ultimately trying to optimize labor. So we used Greg Crabtree's model, and the way he talks about it is keep your cost of goods. The way that he has it set is like, keep it very simple, very, very direct costs. And then all your overhead falls outside of it. And then within that, really what you're focusing on is like, find your leading indicator. Well, like in our industry, it's like, okay, I go bid a job. I know what equipment's needed. I know how long it's needed for. Charge that, mark it up, right? I know how much material is needed. I know how much it's going to cost. Mark it up. The thing that is constantly the variable, how long did it take, right? And so those production type things. And so, you know, that's where traction gives you an idea, but you still got to figure out your stuff within your business. So you got to have, that's where a facilitator helps, you know, find my leading indicators. You know, lagging indicators are pretty straightforward, but you know, how do I get ahead of things? And just, it's just a tool, right? And they give tools too.
That's awesome.
I'm super interested in that.
I know. So we do quarterly resets, go over our vision, go over our goals, but we have not implemented traction.
You know, it's not for everybody. I mean, I think there are a lot of principles that
Absolutely.
like, I mean, the thing that we did is we just wanted to have one thing that we all believed in. Why? Because when you get to be our size, like it's just easier to not say like, oh, we do this one thing from here and we do this other thing from here and we just always done this. We had a point where we're just like, hey, if we just have one thing, like just go with it.
Yeah.
And like traction has been very successful, and that's just the route we went. But at the same time, there's other good stuff too. I think the biggest thing is just get a plan.
Just do something and track it as well.
Have it, and don't like do it and then like put it in a folder and like never touch it again, right? Like I think that's the other thing is like the thing about the VTO is at a minimum, you know, you're pulling it out quarterly, but more than that, it should be out regularly. And we want it transparent to our organization. We actually will put up in our office the VTO. And so our people, all the way down to a brand new hire field labor, walks in our office, they look at the wall and they can see What's the monetary target? What's the quarterly objectives? How does that align with the annual plan? Be transparent, have a plan, and then don't just, I'm done. Okay, my plan's been designed. Like, you have to actually, get behind it and focus on the plan and live it out.
Yeah, you can't just live from the cash balance. You got to have your KPIs. You have to understand your occupancy, your economic occupancy, what your maintenance expenses are. You have to really know those, because if you don't have those, how are you going to plan moving forward? You just can't.
You can. And I mean, you guys love being in business, right?
Mm-hmm.
Would you do it if you were losing money?
No.
Probably not, right? Like, or you're not going to do it for long. Right. And I think that's like the thing for us is like, so one of the things on transparency, be like, okay, so you bill that, you show your cost of goods sold, so you're making X. Be like, yes, that is the risk-adjusted return that we are going to go get to make it worth me being in business. Why? I got 150 people here that I'm responsible for paying a paycheck. I've got all these customers, all this liability. We pay separate from bonding on jobs. I mean, like, we'll pay like 1.2, 1.3 million in insurance, not health insurance, like just insurance, right? So I think that's where you just say, like, I'm in business to ultimately, I got to make money.
Yep.
And that's capitalism. I mean, it's designed that way, and you just provide a good quality or service that other people aren't, or you have an idea and you just run with it.
Yeah, I love it, man. I love it. Blake, this has been a lot of fun. But before we go, we have the final three with CNC. All right, I kind of always ask this question, but I'll just start off with this one. Why do you think, and I don't have the statistic, I should have looked it up beforehand. Why do you think most small businesses fail or fail to grow?
So we talked a little bit about it already today. One would just be operating blindly. And so that just not having that plan. And the other would be just super dependency on people. Like, the sooner that you can just capitalize on the talents that people bring and leverage other people underneath them, the better off you are, right? I mean, you're concentrating a ton of risk in a business when you're relying on a solo person. So you're not going to scale. Ultimately, I mean, talked about the PT business, right? Like, PTs typically come out of school and now they're a doctor, right? And they're probably going to make between 60 grand, 70 grand. Okay. Well, business owners do something different, which is I can leverage other people's time and charge you this and pay them that. And so I think just looking at ways where you're going to add value, I mean, you got to leverage other people's talents. And if you're just going to run with a solo individual you're hyper dependent on them, you're just going to hit. I mean, it's even risky too. Like, I mean, you get hit by a bus and then what? Right. And hopefully that never happens. But I think that's what you see, right? Is like, it's all in one person's head, get things documented, get the right people.
Yep, absolutely.
Outside of traction for what we've been talking about on keeping a business going and or developing the systems and being like proficient in building a business, outside of traction, what's a book that you would suggest? Whether it's a mindset shift or whether it's just a good way to plan moving forward?
I don't read. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I mean, look,
I'm bad at math too.
Listen to Audible. I listen to well, how about this? Just for personal growth.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'll name a couple that I know have stuck with me. So, like, I've enjoyed Man's Search for Meaning. It's, I mean, you know what you're getting. It's deep. It's just
very deep.
Something like that. Atomic Habits is one I usually will point back to, just because, I mean, really you end up being, you talk about discipline. I mean, we were in Denver, right? And you look at these people and it's like, how did you get to that point? Well, it just didn't happen overnight. Like, it's discipline. And what is discipline? It's setting habits. It's your environment shapes you. I mean, you hear it all the time. Like, who do you surround yourself with? Like, it matters. So, Atomic Habits had a lot of good tidbits.
Great book.
I guess I'm trying to think of this next question. We'll just go with this since we were just talking about that. Morning or just regular habits? What are they for you? Something that you typically do that helps Blake function or be better, be the optimal CPA, COO.
Pursuit of personal excellence. So I think I've become a morning person. So it is funny how kids change you. So we got two young kids, and if we want to stay fit, stay sharp, you got to make the time, right? Like, I was playing golf with a guy this week, and he's got a newborn. He can have a kid here in like a week, and it's like, he's like, why is he asking these questions? To be like, the one thing that I can never, there's a couple things I can describe to you that you'll just not understand. One is the feeling of unconditional love. It's gonna be that first time where you're just like, man, that person has like nothing wrong with them. I just, from like second one.
Yeah.
And then, the next piece is like, you never knew how much time you had until you didn't have it with kids. Right. And so that's changed me. So morning is optimal. So, I don't know if maybe you're a night owl, but like, I'm gonna sleep by 9. Why? Because I'm up usually about 4:30. Today got up, ran 6 miles. That's a new thing for me. But like,
Did you drink water beforehand?
Not with lemon and salt, but I should have.
All right.
I'm like that guilty. My vices are as pre-workout. So like
C4 from college.
It's basically C4. It's just
man.
Your hair is standing out. But I mean, my big thing is like I'm not perfect by any means when it comes to having discipline, but I think just my life in general is pretty disciplined. And what does that mean is like, I'm going to get up early in the morning. I'm going to try to get moving. I'm going to do those kind of things. Now, like one day I may be running, might hit the gym, might do my own home gym, something like that. The nice thing, my wife and I both work. And so we got to figure out, hey, how we get the kids out the door. So that's part of that routine. And then you're off and running for the day. But I think, for me, I'm a notebook guy too. And so I was showing, Chris earlier where it's like, I've got my list. On Sundays and Mondays, I usually will take a look at my calendar and I'll just write out what I got for that week. And you were asking like, well, what do you use, your calendar or your notebook? It'd be like, well, interchangeably both. Why? Because I need the calendar for my time management. But then when I put it on my paper, it becomes real. I start thinking about it, and all of a sudden I start blocking out times to start preparing. So it's like, okay, I got this meeting on Thursday. We get this big initiative we're going to be talking about. I got to make sure that I got my ducks in a row before that. Therefore, I'm just writing it down. Oh, Tuesday afternoon's pretty open. Usually it like fills up, but like, hey, if I at least consciously think about it, maybe I'll fill that with some proactive time to just be prepped for it.
Awesome. I love it.
I do, man.
Blake, how can people get a hold of you? And if there's anything you're looking for, what is that?
I love that small and medium-sized business, really any industry. And so, I mean, if people have questions on running that, if they feel stuck, if they just want to, talk to someone about traction and systems, real estate too. I mean, we do some real estate investing, any of those things. I mean, I don't really have like a passion for one specific focus other than like small businesses with, people who want to grow and are willing to put in that time to just be better. So, I'd love to be helpful in that regard. Probably the best way would just be by email. So my name, blake.berke23@gmail is the best way to get a hold of me. And so, yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. It's been
Thanks,
fun,
guys.
man. Appreciate it,
having
buddy. Oh, thank you.